is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Welcome to the MorganMan Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Morgan. Here on the MorganMan Sports Podcast, we talk Atlanta Falcons news, pre-game predictions, and all other news surrounding the Atlanta Falcons.
Touchdown, Atlanta!
Also on the podcast, we talk Call of Duty League, esports, covering Roster Mania, major predictions, COD champs, player trades, and much more to get you ready for every single CDL weekend.
Scuff goes through, and Scuff snaps, wins the one-on-one in optic with the reverse sweep.
If that sounds good with you, put on your Falcons jersey, grab your gaming headset, and let's get this show started. What is going on, you guys? I'm your host, Stacy Morgan, and you're listening to the MorganMan Sports Podcast here on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you find your preferred podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about the Atlanta FaZe taking on the Los Angeles Guerrillas and Cloud9 New York in the final weekend of the Major 2 online qualifiers. So without any further delay, let's go to get straight into today's action. All right, guys, so for clarity and just overall, perspective here, I am recording this even before the week before of the final weekend of the online qualifiers. So basically 2 weeks in advance right here. Why? Well, this past week right here, my job, my everyday job, we have a very special event coming up. We do this twice a year, and I'll be doing it one more time, I think around in like September or so. But it's called a truckload meat sale, and where we basically just work a bunch of hours, selling like a bunch of like meat department items like steaks, ribs, chicken, whatever. And obviously that would be a lot of hours I'll be working that week, potentially between really 80 to 90 hours that week. And your boy really needs a good paycheck. So I'm recording this podcast way ahead of time to give you the podcast episode that you guys definitely need. And also it saves me from just having to record late in the evening. So want to clarify on that. So if I do talk about any of these matches ahead of time, that's why, because I don't know any of the results from last weekend. No nothing, no updated CDL points, no nothing. I'm just giving you based off of how I'm looking at the other teams as they are right now. So, for example, right here, I'm recording this episode that you're hearing right now on March 6th at 2:20 p.m. Eastern. So, again, this is a week before all of this happened. So, do want to clarify that. So, the Atlanta FaZe will be taking on the Los Angeles Guerrillas M8 Saturday, March 15th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And then Cloud9 New York Sunday, March 16th at 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, guys, I don't know about you, but for LEG and Cloud9, they're pretty much bottom of the barrel teams outside of the Vegas Falcons, who still has not won a single game yet, which is 0-14. Again, clarity. This is, recorded ahead of a time before the second to last qualifiers. But Guerrillas sitting at 11th overall with 3 wins, 11 losses. And Cloud9 New York is 7-10 right now. So the way I'm looking at it right here, guys, Atlanta FaZe does have pretty much a practice matchup going into this series right here with LEG. Cloud9 New York, definitely I could see it being a practice matchup before going into the Major 2 tournament. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But for LEG, guys, I'm looking at this right here as a 3-1. I think FaZe is kind of slipping off a little bit in hard points. They're going back to the old routine of just staying off the point and not capturing it. And that's what FaZe really needs to emphasize moving forward, because that's what won them the minor 1 and the major 1 tournament, was staying on that hard point, being very aggressive. Yes, I know you got the talent to recoup, but here lately, when you're trying to recoup, the other team's already got their setups in place, and it's very hard to break that hill. And that's the same thing going into control. If you establish that dominance early, you will win the game, just point blank. But when you're trying to play from behind, then it makes things so much more tougher on the whole team, not just yourself. And that's what Atlanta FaZe has fallen into. They really need to start playing with pure aggression to start off each and every single series, whether it is hard point, search, destroy, or control. You really need to emphasize dominance to start off with and not let the other team, take that dominance at the first half of the match and then try to come back at that second half to win it all. I know you're Atlanta FaZe, you've got the talent, and you've done this before, but sometimes when you face teams that could potentially upset you, like LEG or Cloud9, it's very hard because once they get a momentum going, it's hard to break it. So I'm looking at Atlanta FaZe to win 3-1 over LEG. Now for Cloud9 New York, this is a little bit of a different story. I think 3-2 is going to be the best possible scenario for Atlanta FaZe. I just don't think that Cloud9 New York should be taken likely per se. I think they should be taken as a very serious competitor in this series right here because Cloud9 New York, they're coming off the heels. I know that it ain't the same roster, but still coming off the heels of placing second, I believe it was, or third in the Modern Warfare 3 Call of Duty world champ. So they're still a somewhat decent team despite not having the same roster that they did last year. So 3-2, I think Cloud9 gets a 2-0 advantage to start off against Atlanta FaZe. And then Atlanta FaZe, as always, is classic, bounces back and reverse sweeps Cloud9 New York. So again, I don't really don't want to sit here and say that these are practice matches for Atlanta FaZe, but at the same time, you never know what you're going to get out of Atlanta FaZe. One week they might just absolutely suck, and the next week, boom, they blow up the damn waters with teams like LEG or Cloud9 and go 3-0 and finish a series with less than 30 minutes. I mean, you never know what you're going to get from FaZe, but you will get some entertainment regardless from Atlanta FaZe, and it will be most of the time in a win percentage. And when it comes to the losses, it's usually on main stage or LAN, but other than that, I just don't see Atlanta FaZe losing to none of these teams right here. But it will be a little bit difficult for Atlanta FaZe, especially against Cloud9 New York, like I predicted. C9 New York, goes up 2-0, and then Atlanta FaZe just tries to bounce back and reverse sweeps Cloud9 New York. But for LEG, it's a 3-1 for the boys in red and black. So guys, that is all the time I have for today's episode. I know it was short. I didn't really get into much in-depth details about certain statistics for both teams. Again, that is because I'm recording weeks ahead of time right here because of what my everyday job is requiring of me next week. So that is what it is on that one. I sure hope you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure to like button here on YouTube. Follow me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your preferred podcast. And I, Cole Morgan, will catch you all later. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.